Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden, and welcome to a special bonus edition of Overdue Finds. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. We're doing something a little bit different on today's episode, and I think actually everyone's going to really enjoy the discussion that you're about to hear. So, joining me to preview this episode is official friend of the show and manager of EPL's Sprucewood Branch, Kate Gibson. Kate, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent. Really good. So, Kate, I think everybody's really going to enjoy today's episode because, as I mentioned, we are doing something called Capital City in Conversation. This was originally an online program, but can you let our listeners know a little bit more about Capital City in Conversation?
For sure. So, this is a program that just started up this past month. We're hoping it'll be an ongoing monthly program, either online or in person, or a mix of both. And it's a way to connect with people in the city of Edmonton, see what they're doing. People who like writers in the Capital City Press collection at the library, musicians in the Capital City Records collection, as well as just people who are doing things, really exciting things in Edmonton, to come together and talk about how they're connecting and what they're connecting over and how they do that. So really excited to be able to spearhead this new program.
Yeah, before the pandemic hit, we were in meetings and we were talking about this program. And of course, this was originally supposed to be an in-person thing, and I know eventually one day it will be when
One day.
everything's kind of back to when everything's kind of hopefully back to normal. And when we were talking about this, actually, after we recorded, it was our Back to the Future episode, which you were just on, and you were mentioning this program to me again, and I was like, you know what? If we can, let's grab that audio and let's release it as a bonus episode of the podcast, just in case a lot of our customers weren't able to sit in on that live Zoom conversation you were having.
Hmm.
And one of the really cool things too about the conversation everybody's about to hear is the guests. So let everybody know who you chatted with, because I think it's a really fascinating talk.
Yeah, it was a really fun lineup that I was able to bring together for this first one. So we had local writer Marty Chan, who was writer residence for EPL back in 2011, and all around just great guy, great community activator. He is really, really active on social media and YouTube. He's been doing so much during this um, pandemic to connect with people. We also had Martin Kerr, who is a Capital City Records musician, a local musician who's been hosting a number of concerts in neighborhoods that he talks quite a bit about in this conversation. And last but not least is Linda Huang, um, who I think yesterday was her birthday when we were recording this. So she talks about some of the stuff that she does as a blogger and an influencer in the city, and how she's been promoting businesses throughout the pandemic through things like Lindork Fest, which you'll have to listen to find out what that is. But yeah, it was a great lineup. We did have a few technical issues with Linda. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to go into depth on some of her answers because of that. But it was a really, really fun conversation. And I'm so happy that you let me put it on as a bonus content for the podcast.
Of course. No, like I said, when you were telling me about the conversation, and we kind of thought that, this would be, we really think we want as many people to listen to this as possible. I know not everybody was able to join us on the original Zoom conversation. So we are
Hmm.
more than happy to share this chat with everybody. And I have to mention a couple of things too. It's funny you mentioned Linda's birthday, because I know in the interview that we're about to hear, she talks about her birthday week. So I
Yes.
hope, Linda, belated happy birthday week to you. And also, too, with Martin Kerr. So, for those of you who are participating in our summer reads, so the Summer Reading Club for Adults, one of the grand prizes, by the way, is a curbside concert by Martin Kerr. So, it's interesting because he also, I'm going to tease it too, he does play a song during this interview, which is really fun. And I can't unfortunately win any prizes for this contest because obviously I'm helping run it. But for those of you who are participating, you'll be in a real treat if you win that curbside concert from Martin.
Yeah, he's a great musician, and it was a lovely surprise when he pulled out his guitar and played for us. So I'm excited for everyone to get a chance to see that, or listen to that, and also just listen to this whole talk. As you said, we had a good turnout, but it's always great if more people get a chance to hear what we talked about.
So I think everybody's going to really enjoy this conversation. It's fun. And so without further ado, we present to you Capital City in Conversation, hosted by Kate Gibson.
Hi. And welcome to Capital City in Conversation. My name is Kate Gibson, and I'm the manager of the Sprucewood Library at the Edmonton Public Library, as well as the lead of Capital City Press, which is EPL's way to support and promote local writers. And I'm your host for the evening, so welcome. With me today is Linda Huang. Linda is a Canadian blogger and social media strategist based in right here in Edmonton. Primarily writing about food, travel, lifestyle, and pet topics. Linda organizes Instagrammable wall guides and photo walks, the Edmonton International Cat Festival, and most recently, Lindork Fest, which we'll get to in a minute. So welcome, Linda.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yay. Joining us today as well is Martin Kerr. Martin spent almost a decade busking at farmers markets and playing house concerts, but in recent years has sold out the Winspear Centre here in Edmonton, played the Folk Fest, and opened for Sarah McLachlan at Rogers Place. In the past few months, Martin has been delighting us with Facebook live streams and neighborhood pop-up concerts. And if you're interested in hearing his music, he is a Capital City Records musician through EPL, which means you can go to capitalcityrecords.ca and get access to his album there. So thank you for coming, Martin.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
And finally, my third guest, Marty Chan. And I realized after I invited you guys that I have two, a Martin and a Marty. So I'm sorry if I get you guys mixed up. Marty is an award-winning author, playwright, and as he says on his website, professional liar since 1988. Over the span of his career, he has authored hit plays, worked as a story editor on a TV series, penned radio dramas, and written, now on your website it says 8 kids' books. Is it still 8 kids' books, or is it more than that?
I think it's slightly more.
Yeah, I felt like that was not quite enough. He won the 2005 City of Edmonton Book Award and was the 2011 Writer-in-Residence for the Edmonton Public Library. His plays have been produced all around the world. Marty is also a Capital City Press author and will be featured in the new collection at Stanley A. Milner Downtown Library once it opens. So welcome, Marty. How are you all doing?
Good.
These strange times.
I feel boxed in right now.
It's a lot, this grid view. We're slowly getting used to it. And we seem to have lost Linda. Not sure what happened there. Hopefully she joins us in a second.
Bad reception on the road, maybe.
Hopefully she'll join us in a sec. I'm sure she will.
Time myself. Just came back from a little couple days away with my missus for our 15th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
We were about half an hour ago, so I'm glad I made it.
Where did you get to?
We actually got to Victoria.
Oh, wow. That's lovely.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. That's where we got married, so it was nice to get back there.
Yeah, and I've been following, I'm sure she'll be back in a second, but Linda has just been down in Medicine Hat as well, so she's been on the road. Marty, have you been anywhere?
I have been to my living room.
Yes.
And the kitchen. And just this morning, I was outdoors mowing the lawn. Well, actually, my wife was mowing the lawn. She's on here, so she's gonna fact check me. I was weed whacking. She mowed the lawn.
Nice.
Right.
Well, yeah, get it in that time in between thunderstorms, right?
Yeah, you gotta sneak them in when you can.
All right. It looks like we've got Linda back now, so welcome back. No worries. We were just chatting. All right. So I'm just going to ask some questions, see how things are going, but we'll see where this conversation takes us. Just to start out for the three of you, when COVID hit home, for me, that was March 12th. I don't think I'll ever forget. That's when kind of my world began to change, and suddenly EPL was having to find new ways of providing service for everyone. So to start off, what are some of the ways that you all adapted to connect with Edmonton and to connect with your online community or your local community when COVID hit for you?
Well, I'll go if everyone's being polite. I pivoted very quickly to doing what seemed the obvious thing to do and that everybody seemed to be doing, which was doing online concerts and delivering live online content. Thankfully, people were very supportive of the idea in those early stages, and over the years managed to build up several thousand followers on various platforms. And so I did a weekly concert on Sundays to reach out to my audience, and was able to connect with other audiences as well. There were several groups and organizations running concert series, and they would co-promote my concerts. So I was able to reach lots of people that I'd never reached before, and people were very good about sharing those live streams with their friends. And so it became a really, really social thing in a kind of strange way. And it was really heartwarming and wonderful to see the level of support, because these were pay what you can concerts, and we just put a PayPal link in the description so people could donate if they felt like it or were able to. And the level of generosity was really quite overwhelming. So that worked for those early days of the pandemic. But my experience was that the novelty quickly wore off in those few weeks, because everybody was doing it. And as soon as the weather started to warm up, people were much less inclined to be sitting in front of a screen all day. So, which is totally fair enough. So I had to think again after that.
So the pandemic for me hit probably at the worst time, because I was just starting my spring touring, going into schools and libraries and doing author presentations and writing workshops for kids.
Wow.
So just like Martin, I had to pivot, and I started doing online sessions. There are a couple of organizations that were willing to try to set up either Google Meet or Zoom sessions with kids. And it worked for the most part. And I think I echo Martin's statement, where early on it was exciting and new. And then, of course, as the months or the weeks turned into months, you could see kids sort of checking out just because they'd just been staring at the screen for so long. The other thing that I tried doing just to sort of break things up from the sort of live video conferencing is I started making videos. I started doing storytelling videos on YouTube, as well as writing tips for kids. And then I started doing a little project called Letters of the Pandemic. And it was just a different way of reaching out to an audience, one where people could tune in on their time. Because I found that, at least with YouTube videos, once you make them, you put them out there, and people can sort of come in and watch on their own time. I know every night for my wife and I, our nightly ritual is to watch the Raccoon Whisperer, a guy out in Nova Scotia who feeds his raccoons. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 raccoons. I'm talking like a dozen to 20 raccoons show up on his porch. They beg for food. He feeds them chicken wieners for about 20 minutes, and it's quite relaxing to watch them. But I found that connecting to people with YouTube has been sort of a way that I've been able to connect with my audiences. That's just a little different than the live presentations.
Nancy in the chat is wondering if we can provide a link to the Raccoon Whisperer.
If you look up Raccoon Whisperer on YouTube, you will find him.
Linda, how has it been for you?
It's been good. So I found that when it first hit, I think what happened or what changed for me was just a slight focus in the type of content that I was writing. So here's some more content for you at home. And then here are still ways that you can try a restaurant or support a restaurant while still mainly being at home. So I really think I still tried to stay true to what I normally talk about with my community, and it was just then trying to put myself in their shoes and figure out what would be useful for them during the pandemic. And that was like one of the things that I had immediately done right after was, because everything was shutting down and closing, So small businesses have a very, big place in my heart. My parents have a small business, so I was really concerned with how the small businesses were going to fare with being closed and what, closed for dining, and then some were moving to just takeout and that sort of thing in the early days. So I started basically trying to connect with the community through, here are some independent little business crawls that you can do on your own as you're going to get groceries. Also stop here, here, and here. To support some of these small businesses. So that was kind of initially right away what I sort of shifted in doing. But a lot of my work was online anyway, so it was just a matter of changing my perspective a little bit. So it was more focused on, now more people are at home, how can I still create some interesting content and give them useful information while they're at home.
So Marty, you mentioned the stories from the pandemic videos. Where did that come from? It's such a great idea. I love it. What's the reaction? What's the story behind it? What's the story of it? If people haven't seen them, I don't know. Hopefully they've seen them.
Letters of the Pandemic is sort of a series of videos. The first 9 were just basically sort of a satire of somebody who was experiencing the lockdown and just penning a letter to a loved one. So think back to like Civil War letters, but acted out by a great performer, Stephanie Wolf, who was the one who actually approached me about trying to do some sort of video project. And she had seen some of the writing videos that I did for kids. And she said, I'd like to be part of that. And I said, oh, that'd be fun. But, I sort of know Stephanie more from the days when I wrote plays, when I was working in theater, writing plays for adults. And I thought, oh man, this would be a great excuse to do something for adults. And so we sort of concocted this idea of, what's life like during the pandemic, and just sort of pick all sorts of iconic moments and try to satirize them. I have a bit of a political bent, if anyone has seen those videos. You kind of know that I kind of skewer the government in those videos. And it was a good excuse for me to play around with learning editing. And so if you watch the first one, it's just basically a one-take performance from Stephanie. I think I put a title screen at the top and the back end and some music underneath. But as my confidence grew with editing, I started getting a little fancier with the tricks. In fact, the final Letters of the Pandemic is really just a love letter to everybody who watched the video. Stephanie plays 6 different characters in a simulated Zoom meeting. And we also finish off with like a music video. So pretty well everything in the kitchen sink got thrown into Letters of the Pandemic. But it just came out of, one of those classic rules about writers, write what you know. And at the time I knew a lot about the lockdown. And so we just started writing about the lockdown and all the weird and funny things that we did during the lockdown.
You mentioned, it does have a political bent, and you skewer the government a bit. What has the reaction been like online to them?
I got a lot of response from people who were active in Alberta politics, so they definitely gravitated toward the videos. My favorite response was a recent retweet. Somehow the video, the last Letters of the Pandemic, reached the Twitter account of Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong fame, and he is from Alberta, or he originally was from Alberta, and he watched the video, liked it so much he actually retweeted it. So I thought, wow, that's sort of a great cap to that little series. So those who are active in Alberta politics really twig to it. And there's a few generic Letters of the Panic that people who weren't even involved in politics could get a kick out of them.
So Martin, you mentioned again your pop-up concerts. They've been very successful. How has it evolved since you started? I mean, you started just trying it out. Has it changed over the past few months, how you're approaching it, how you're doing it?
Well, as I mentioned right at the start of the pandemic, we were limited to doing these Facebook Lives and online content.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the snow melted, we started getting inquiries for summer concerts as we usually do, but they were much fewer and further between than we were used to. But we got one particular inquiry came in through my website, which said, me and my friend are big fans of Martin. Would he come and sing to us in our alleyway while we sit on our porch, on our balconies, and have a glass of wine? We could pay him X amount of dollars, which was way below what I usually charge. And me and my manager had a 2-minute conversation about it and said, sure, let's do it. It was right around the corner from my house. So it was very low risk. and basically just took my little sound system and said, "Yeah, I can do it. All we need is a power supply." And they said, "Oh, great, bring a sound system because there's an old folks' home right across the alley, and I'll let them all know as well so they can listen from their windows." So I set up in the middle of this alleyway in Bonnie-Doon, right by the Faculté Saint-Jean, and just sang a set of music, like almost an hour of songs, and it was really beautiful. We started out with just these two ladies who had invited me, and with each song, more people were kind of gravitated towards the music. There were a few people out for their walks. This was mid-April, April 17th. So it was just starting to be nice enough to go out for walks. And I think by the end of it, there was probably about 40 people listening, perfectly well socially distanced, from the alleyway, from the street, from the windows in the old folks' home. Was like a 6-story building with elderly people listening from their windows, and some of them dancing and singing along and waving, and people coming out from their balconies on the other side. And it was so wonderful because we'd been locked down for about a month by that point, and people were really feeling it, feeling very lonely and down, especially people who live alone. And so it was really wonderful to see them enjoying some music and just seeing the joy in each other's faces across the alley. There was a police car drove by because we weren't sure if we were even allowed to do this. And we figured since people were we called it stay home street concerts. We figured since people were in their own property, it wasn't a gathering, and so it didn't violate the restrictions. And as long as there weren't too many people gathering on the street or getting too close together, it should be okay. And that was how it turned out. There weren't that many people. There was maybe 20 people watching from the street, but very far apart. And yeah, police cruiser came by and they wound their windows down and listened for a couple songs and then drove off. And so it was a really wonderful experience, just that first one. And my manager, Anthony, who's very quick on the draw, he loves to jump on opportunities when they come. He posted a quick video and a couple of photos of what we were doing on Facebook and said, "Who wants a social distancing street concert?" And we got lots of responses. People were so eager to have some live music back in their lives. They hadn't been able to go anywhere for a month. They hadn't heard anything face to face. So we started booking these up 2-3 per day. And that's how it's been ever since.
Wow.
I make sure to take 1 or 2 days off a week for my voice to recover, but basically I've been playing 2 or 3 shows a day, every day since the snow melted. And I feel like I've seen every corner of Edmonton and St. Albert and Sherwood Park and Spruce Grove and Beaumont and even down in Red Deer and Calgary a couple times. Just trying to play for as many people as possible because, first of all, people really need music, especially in hard times. In lonely times, people need music to help them through, to help them process their feelings, to bring some joy, to sometimes to help the tears flow a bit. And I make sure to make it a really fun and emotional and also celebratory experience for everybody. And secondly, because it's an opportunity for me and for my team to make a bit of hay while the sun shines, because we have no idea once the weather turns back again how we're gonna keep going through the winter months. So we really jumped on it and just working as hard as we can to reach as many people as we can. And the concept, the branding of stay home street concerts really took off very quickly. We came up with that name in the first week of doing these, I think, because we wanted to make it very clear that this was something that was in line with the restrictions, that you could stay home and enjoy music from your front yard or your driveway or your window. And so it's basically 1 block at a time. I set up in the middle of the block, and the host, the person who has invited me, takes it upon themselves to inform everybody that lives on that block or that cul-de-sac, but nobody else. They don't publicize it. We don't publicize it, so we're not going to have unrestricted numbers of people gathering or showing up randomly. So it's not really a pop-up concert in that sense, because we're not advertising it. It's specifically for the people who live there so they can listen from home. And now, of course, with the restrictions easing a bit, people are feeling a bit more free to invite some family over to listen with them on the driveway at a safe distance and that kind of thing. So it's evolved a little bit in terms of getting a little bit bigger, I suppose, now that the numbers are larger that we're allowed to have. And so sometimes we'll have some in the backyard for a wedding anniversary or something like that. But basically, it's a continuation of what I've always done, which is almost coming full circle really to how I started, playing on street corners and bringing music to people where they're at has been my philosophy, because it's so hard to get people to come out to a bar in a basement at 11 p.m. on a Thursday to listen to your new album. But it's much easier to bring the music to them in a place that they want to be anyway, like the farmer's market or their street corner. So it's been working really well. And I really hope that we can keep it going beyond the pandemic as well, because it's been so wonderful to see people of all ages and backgrounds, most of whom would never go to a music venue, but they all love music and they love being together, sharing that experience. So it's a model that I hope that we can continue.
Yeah, it's very cool. One of my friends plays with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, and they've been doing similar things, inspired by you, I think, in part. So they saw what you were doing.
Yeah, we did one together, and then they kind of ran with it and have been doing their own.
Yeah, and yeah, it's true. Like people who would never maybe go to a classical music concert or go to the Whisperer or just can't get downtown. There's so many opportunities to bring music to them, and I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been active on social media in different ways. You said Facebook, Twitter, just your websites themselves. And obviously, all of us found ourselves isolated and distanced from each other in a way we hadn't before. Have you noticed a change in how you're interacting with people online, or how your fans are interacting with you through these media?
Interesting question.
Thank you.
I'm pretty open on social media. Like if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, basically what you see there is a slightly heightened version of me. If I stub my toe, it will show up on a Facebook post. So I think a lot of people were used to me and my bizarre sense of humor, and just sort of reporting the little bits and pieces of my life that then started to connect with, number one, my political bent, and then number two, the connection to my books. And I was lucky enough, I think, to be approached by the TD Summer Reading Club program. So that's a national program where they're encouraging kids to read through the summer, and they knew that they couldn't do anything because of the pandemic and the lockdown. So they asked a few authors and some illustrators to make videos for them to basically do a book talk. And at the time I was just starting to play around with editing videos together. So I cloned myself and had a conversation with myself and put that out as a video. And I found that the people who are watching those videos are responding really well to it, because I think one of the things that you have to do as an artist, and I think Martin sort of did a great job in terms of the concert series, right? See what no one else is doing and sort of pop in there, and suddenly everybody wants to do it, right? And so that's really what artists are trying to do. They're going, okay, we know there's a huge number of people out there that are probably doing Zooms, just like us, like we're doing, but what can we do that's slightly different? And I think that's one of the things that I found with the videos, that by doing something that not all the other authors were doing, because a lot of authors were doing sort of the talking head where you're sitting staring at your laptop camera and doing a book talk. I wanted to do something just slightly different, and that I think caught on with people, and it's one of the things that as artists we're always trying to do, is we're just trying to find something that's just slightly different but appealing enough that people want to connect, which is I think a little counterintuitive to way a lot of what I've been noticing with YouTubers is what they do is they find out what everybody likes and then just try to make a lot of it. So when I was doing tutorials trying to learn how to edit, there were lots and lots of videos on how to edit certain things. And a lot of YouTubers were talking about, okay, this is what people like, so I'm going to make videos about this. So the algorithm pushes my thing up to the top, which for me was like, why would I do something that everybody wants when I want to do something that's my voice? And I think as more and more artists get involved with the online programming, you're going to see some really interesting and sort of out of the box kind of projects that will take shape.
Martin, have you noticed a change in the way you're interacting or people are interacting with you?
Honestly, in the first weeks of the pandemic, I was interacting a lot more, and I think everybody was, because we were spending less time in real life and more time on social media. But since then, since we started the Stay Home Street Tour, I've actually been interacting a lot less online. And all my interactions really have been either about the street tour and responding to people's comments and questions about the videos and photos that we're posting. And the occasional family thing, because I have a personal profile as well that 5,000 people follow, and it's nice to share stuff. I have 3 young kids at home that are always doing something cute, so it's nice to show some of that stuff as well, to bring a smile to somebody and stay in touch with people on a human level. So I've actually been using social media a lot less since I've been able to interact with people in real life again, even though it's at a distance. That's kind of been filling my cup, I suppose, and been enough for me. So the rest of the time, I've mostly been focused on family, and I'm okay with that. Really, social media is really useful for certain things, and it's certainly be very key to developing my business and keeping in touch with the people that I've played for. But one of the great things about this street tour, that hasn't been true before, is that everybody that I've played for, I know where they live. I know where to find them again. Whereas usually when people come to see you at a theater or they watch you online, you've got no idea how to find them again unless they want to sign up for your mailing list, but then still no guarantee you're going to get in touch with them. So this is a really cool starting point for building a real community where I can go play those streets again next year, and with a new show, and see how people are getting on. And so that's pretty cool, that I'm making connections outside of social media, but a lot of it is thanks to social media, because most of these bookings, the hosts have found me through seeing their friend post a video or a photo from one of my shows, and so it's really been driving a lot of that interaction. But there hasn't been an awful lot. Most of the real quality interaction has been in person, which has been very refreshing.
Linda, I think you're back. Your video might be frozen, but I think you're still there.
Frozen like this.
Yeah. That's okay. This is the beauty of this online format. Sometimes there is technical difficulties.
What a shame.
Yeah, I just let her know it's not working, so maybe she can, I don't know, try and come in again.
The things that is really great about, like, when we're dealing with little technical glitches like this, certainly when you're doing something for an audience, you have to sort of react to what the audience gives you. And I know from going into schools, anything and everything can happen if you're of a group of kids. And so it keeps me pretty nimble in terms of how I have to respond to things. Yeah. And at first, when I started doing some of the Zoom presentations, because everybody was muted, it felt a little flat, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of how you relate to the audience, because you're trying your best to stare at the little green dot that represents your camera lens. And the first couple of times that I did Zooms, I was exhausted by the end, because I kept thinking, this is a live presentation, so I'm going to treat it like a live presentation. So I'm trying to connect with all the faces that I can see on the Zoom screen, mm-hmm. but they weren't looking at me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a minute, like, why aren't they looking at me? And then I finally dawned on me that, if I have the audience engaged, they're going to be looking not at the camera lens, but they're going to be looking at the screen, which mm-hmm. to me will look like they're not looking at me. So I would work twice as hard to try to get them to look up at me. But the more I tried to connect with them, the more they connected and the more they stared at the screen. And then finally, I sort of like the light bulb came on. I was like, oh, right. The relationship that I have with these video conferences is going to be a lot different. I have to make that relationship with the little green dot, mm-hmm. have everybody sort of on my periphery, but just know that there's an audience there that I'm going to try to reach. And if they're not looking at me, then they're connecting. Now, on top of that, you've got the chat function on Zoom. Mm-hmm. I'm working with kids who have grown up with this technology, so they can freely chat and still pay attention to what's going on the screen. Me, I've got progressive lenses, and I'm trying desperately to like flip forth between chat and video conferencing and the camera lens. So I often found that after a Zoom session, I would just have to take a good long nap, just because it's so draining. Whereas with a live presentation, you get that. I don't know if you're like this, Martin, but you get that audience loop or that feedback.
They give you energy back, and it feels great. But yeah, you don't get any of that in the online thing. I mean, it's so nice to see people's comments come in, but mm-hmm. that live interaction really feeds your energy as a performer, and it's very difficult to know if you're doing a good job to start with, and maybe that creates some anxiety that spends energy when you're not hearing that. So yeah, I'm so used to hearing people respond at the end of a song, or when I tell a joke, to laugh, and it's very hard to just keep going into the dead silence without being able to look people in the eye or hear their voices. So that was certainly a challenge to get used to, but I think we gotten used to it a little bit.
Thank you. Linda is back, and before
Yes.
she disappears again, I want to ask her about Lindork Fest and Adopt a Shoppy Egg. So can you tell us a little bit about that, Linda?
Yeah, so something that I've been doing as a way to connect with the community and, again, help small businesses is it actually, I did find it sort of naturally happened with the pandemic. A lot of businesses started to reach out to me and ask if I could share about them on social media, if I could give them a shout out, if I could let people know that they need help, or that they're doing takeout, or that they're now reopen for dine-in. And then it sort of happened where I went into this restaurant because someone told me that the owner had opened during the pandemic and it had been really slow for him. So I went in, had a nice conversation with him, and it was just the sweetest, saddest story is that he had opened during the pandemic and had been really slow. So he had opened on White Ave too, and so the rent was very high, pandemic, no one was coming in, and he's just this, like, one sad old man. So I posted about him on social media, and the reaction was incredible. Like, everyone wanted to help him. He had lineups out the door within hours of the post, and then still, it's been now, I think, almost 3 weeks. I got a message from someone the other day that said they still saw some lineups out his shop. So I think that was really, like, I mean, I've always, I experienced it a lot where I'm seeing the community really come together to help small business owners or entrepreneurs, but that was just such an amazing moment during this pandemic where people did not want this new restaurant to shutter because of COVID. And then from there, had the idea, my birthday was coming up, actually this Sunday, and I thought, you know, is there a way that I can help or facilitate the helping of, because it really was the community that came together and sharing all those posts, but can I help more businesses in this way? And so actually a guy on Twitter named Andy, during all of the support for the Japanese restaurant, he had said, we need to, like, adopt more shops. And so I took his initial idea and hashtag and said, hey, I'm going to use this for my birthday. I'm going to see if I can get people to nominate businesses that need support. We're going to put a list together, and everyone's going to pledge to spend at least $20 at each of these businesses. So we had 500 nominations for businesses, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I narrowed it down to 50 because I wanted to make sure that it was still impactful instead of spreading everyone thin. And then the goal was to get at least 5 people to pledge to spend $20 at least at these 50 spots, so that we could, in theory, spend $5,000 at the 50 businesses. So we got 5 people signed up for each place, and everyone's basically been spending for the last week. Most people are spending more than $20, and it's just a really good. It was really nice because I love when something that starts on social media can make this real world impact or does carry on in the community itself. And you know, I had people who said, well, what if I want to support other businesses that aren't on your list? And I said, you do that. That's great. Please do. So yeah, so I'm hoping that after this, you know, that still carries on, and I've got some ideas on how to keep that going as well. But I really found that during the pandemic, people wanted, if they could, we always said, if you can spend the $20, then please do with us as part of this. But I think if they can help, people generally are they want to, and that's really heartwarming to see. And I think they're more likely to help and support their community, you know, even if you just ask. And with that first restaurant, it was just that I asked, can we please help him so that he can pay rent? And then you kind of go from there. So I think the power, I always love talking about cool examples of when social media can lead to positive change and like real meaningful, tangible change in the real world. And then hopefully this notion or spirit of this carries on even after my birthday week ends.
Yeah, I think that was a great. I mean, again, I saw that on Twitter happening, and then a few hours later, the pictures rolling in of the lineups was amazing. And even in the chat, someone has mentioned that that's where they had seen your name before because of that restaurant. And it's just amazing. I do think, and something we were talking about while you were trying to get on, how people are sort of interacting with each other online through social media. Obviously, that's a huge not change, but it's just such an uplifting way that has happened during this pandemic. And I find it interesting. I don't know if you guys have found this, but there seems to have been a turn to more local and supporting our local community more during this time. I know I'm going to local restaurants as much as I can, going to local shops, indie bookstores, Audrey's and Glass Bookshop. Those are two of the bookstores that we're trying to patronize, but there's other ones as well. I don't know if you've all found that as well.
Absolutely. I think it's more important than ever, and people are realizing that. I mean, there's been a kind of a gradual death of local shops as it's gotten easier and easier to shop online over the last few years. But I think this has really brought it into focus that if we don't do something now, we're going to lose most of these places. And we don't want to see that happen. We love our local culture. And I think in many ways, the pandemic is bringing the best out in people, and they want to make sacrifices and go the extra mile to help their neighbors in whatever way they can. So that's been really inspiring to see.
Yeah, it's interesting that, this time where we're all so online right now to connect and doing these kind of workshops, that we're not just buying our stuff on Amazon. It really has been a turn away from that, which is nice.
I think Jeff's still doing okay, though.
Linda, again, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did want to say what I found to be sort of interesting in terms of supporting local for me, because I have always tried to do that, but I actually found that with the pandemic, social media sort of had the opposite effect, where I sought out specifically finding restaurants, bakeries, cafes that didn't have social media, that weren't online, that didn't have social media presence. Specifically, and there was a lot actually of the nominations in Adopt a Shop that came in for like really popular and active social media restaurants, like restaurants that are on social media. And then I intentionally, excluded them, not that they don't need the help either, but I think that they were in a better position to build their own community and talk to their audience and plead to their customers. So it was funny to me that, I intentionally, I was like, oh, I could go for that, this weekend, but I'm going to find something else, because I don't think that they'll have a hard time getting someone to see their post or placing an order. Totally.
I think that's pretty interesting too, in the sense of how we might have been taking our sort of what was around us for granted. Like I know certainly with my neighborhood, my wife and I have taken to sort of walking more around the neighborhood, and you start to discover what's there. So that's something that you might have just sort of passed by as you're driving. You wouldn't even think about that business twice. But now that you're walking, you go, oh, I see this business, maybe I should support it. And then so I like Linda's notion of not going to the businesses that were reaching out on social media, but the sort of local shops that are just trying to make it, and they need the support of the community. And I remember just by our house, there's a Vietnamese shop, Pho and Bun, and the daughter of the owner, or the daughter-in-law of the owner, saw that their business was going down. And so there's an app called Nextdoor, which is all about like things going on in your neighborhood. And she just posted something saying, hey, we need some help. And I think she posted it on Friday morning. And so we saw it, and so we ordered, and it was an hour and a half wait because they were receiving so many orders, and the support has continued from there, from a lot of people who might have just sort of blipped by that restaurant, not thought twice about it, and now they know it's there, and they're going to tell their friends, and so it keeps that support there, because there's nothing worse in your neighborhood than to see a whole bunch of empty shops, right? Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where, because of the lockdown and the pandemic, we're now exploring sort of this sort of hyper local sense in terms of what's just outside of our house, when sometimes with social media we're looking at something across the city, across the province, across the world, and now we're just taking in the city that we I'm hoping that we love. And for those of you who aren't in Edmonton, why aren't you here?
Totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's been one of the silver linings for me, for sure, is that everyone's home. And I think in a normal year, if I'd been going around playing street concerts block at a time, half the people wouldn't be there, maybe even more than half, because everyone would be out, doing all the stuff that they do on holiday in Mexico, or watching the Oilers, or going to a big concert, or, at soccer practice. And it's really, really rough and sad for all of those businesses that haven't been able to operate. But the silver lining for sure, I think, is that people are getting to know their neighbors better than ever. And when I go to a street, I see everyone at home. And when they come out onto the driveway to listen, they all stay to chat, across the grass afterwards. And it's really wonderful to see those relationships blossoming.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that too. I'm not an extrovert, and so I've lived in my house for almost 7 years now, and I didn't know my neighbors particularly well until this summer. And now we're, guy down the road is giving us rhubarb from his garden because he wants us to try it, and it's really neat to see those kind of interactions and get to know the people around me. I'm going to switch gears. I was trying to think of a way to segue into my next question, but there's really no good way to segue into this. Linda, I want to talk, because right near the beginning of the pandemic, you had to shift gears pretty fast on something that you've been doing for years, and it's the International Cat Festival. So how was the challenge? Was it quite challenging to move that from a physical conference that you held every year to something online this year?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. We actually first had made the decision to cancel the event, period, with the pandemic, just because we weren't sure. Oh, thank you, Nancy. I see she said Cat Fest as well. So yeah, we made the decision to cancel because we really weren't sure what was going to be happening with this pandemic. And then after taking a couple weeks to feel things out, and then, start to see that, okay, everyone is switching online. And I had actually attended a few at that point. This would have been late April. I had already been to 2 virtual conferences and sort of 1 virtual event. So I was like, okay, we can do that. And we can do it better, is what I was thinking. So then it was a matter of, it was less than a month. We essentially tried to take the on stage, because the physical festival has a main stage where there's usually presentations and that sort of thing. So we figured we'd take all of that and try to make it online, but then we would also weave in more interactive how-to type of workshops. Actually, Marty was one of our presenters, so he talked about his cat book, True Story. But we also had cat lovers showing you how to do cat cookies, and we had a photographer showing you how to take better photos of your cat. We had someone show you how to make cat toys. So it was half educational, half sort of workshop-y, but it was themed around, here's hopefully some things you can do with your cat at home. So is that idea of that at-home part again. We had you, and Megan with the symphony. Well, we tried anyway.
We tried.
Technical difficulties. Try to do a performance because you were cat lovers as well. But yeah, we had back-to-back but also simultaneous events. So our activities. So that's one of the key differences. We really wanted to have it feel like there's so much going on. Which room do I go to next? And it was an interesting challenge. I think technology was a big challenge. We saw much less attendees for the online events than we would in person. And we raised money for nonprofits, so we raised less money this year. But what was really interesting was that we had people from all over the world able to come now with this virtual event. So that really opened up and was really cool to see someone from Germany, someone from Australia, people all over the US, all across Canada. And some of the feedback that we got was that even from people who had been to the physical festival was that they loved how intimate this online event felt. It was like the speakers were talking right to them, or they were right there. Anyway, so we got some really interesting feedback. Overall, I think people were forgiving of the technical difficulties, and then it was just really cool to be able to sort of go beyond just Edmonton area for cat lovers, so really connect people from all over. And now moving forward next year, even if we are able to do a physical event, hopefully we are able to, we will definitely have some type of online component, because I think we learned that there are some really neat ways that you can connect with people, and then it really does make it international. We called it the Edmonton International Cat Festival. So now really with the virtual, it was like, okay, now we are actually international.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, going forward, you'll include that virtual component, because I was going to ask all of you guys, do you think these new ways of connecting virtually, or, I mean, you've already mentioned, Martin, the pop-up neighborhood concerts, once, there's a vaccine and we don't have to do it this way anymore, do you think you'll incorporate things you've done or learned during this time into what you do in the future?
The question was about how we're going to use what we've learned here in the future,
or will you just you've already mentioned you're hoping to continue this kind of concerts, but is there anything else like the Facebook live streaming? We haven't really talked about
yeah, I mean, the first few Facebook live streams were really an exercise in screwing up with technical difficulties and the adventures in trying to get that right, like using a better microphone, but then not actually selecting it in the program, and setting up a better camera, but then it having too much bandwidth for the internet and crashing, and then reverting to my phone at the last minute and then having it fall off of the stand and just film the ceiling while I wasn't noticing. Those kinds of things I will carry forward with me, learning experiences. But also, I'm always trying to leverage what I'm doing now into the next thing. And so with the street concerts, we've been able to use it to promote my next big show. I have the Jubilee Auditorium booked for my next big show. I like to do at least one big show a year locally, because it's where most of my fans are. And it's actually, I've found, much easier, I'm giving away a trade secret here, much easier to get people to come to a big event than a small event. So it's honestly much easier for me to sell out the Whisperer than to sell out Jeffrey's Cafe. Because people can get excited about the dream of me filling a venue that I'm not supposed to be able to fill as an independent artist. And they can come along for the ride and know that they're helping me do something outrageous. So we did the Whisperer a couple of times, and this year we had booked the Tube. And even though we have no idea, honestly, if it's going to go ahead as scheduled, we have it booked for November 27th, by the way, and it's almost sold out. People have been jumping on board, and at every street concert I invite people and I bring tickets to the show so they can take some home. And so we don't know if the concert will be postponed. It may well be postponed to a later date, but people still want to take that chance with me because they see how much it means to me, and they see that they're supporting something exciting and local. And so I have that to look forward to in the winter. As a result of everything we're doing during the pandemic, I could be playing my biggest show ever to a live audience. So that's pretty cool.
Marty, I mean, one of the things we haven't talked about as well, you've been working closely with libraries and schools during this time, coming up with creative things to do with them, videos. How's that been? And is that something that, you're going to, no matter what the future holds, sort of carry with you and keep doing?
I think I'm going to continue doing a lot of this online and video making because when you think about the impact of the pandemic, I mean, on the short term, you're thinking about quarantine, lockdown, hoping for a vaccine. But the long term is this has been a huge impact on the economy and a lot of people's budgets. So when you're looking at libraries and you're looking at schools, the budgets they might have had for programming in the past is probably going to shrink until the economy bounces back and people actually have the dollars to spend for the kind of programming that existed before. But there's still going to be a need for programming. It just, they may not be able to present it in the same way that they did before. And so I remember the Yellowhead Regional Library System approached me earlier in the summer and said, look, we want to do a reading club. We don't want to tap into what the TD Summer Reading Club was doing. So can you do a author talk for us. And I said, yeah, I can shoot it as a video and put it out there. And I started thinking, oh, I can do more of these and hit different libraries and different systems and go into school, or not go into schools, but do presentations for schools, especially the ones in rural areas, because one of the challenges for a school in an outlying area is that if they bring in an author to do a presentation, not only do they have to pay the author fee, but they also have to cover the cost of travel and accommodation. But if they can get the same presentation, but through video conferencing, it's a great cost saver. And I'm sort of the age where I touring is for the young. Automatically, touring is for the young. The idea of throwing my books in a suitcase into the back of a car and driving 3 hours to do a presentation, I mean, it wasn't glamorous to begin with to show up at a small town and do this for one day and then immediately drive back. But it was rewarding to see the impact that I had on kids. So if I can find different ways to connect with kids, whether it be live or video conferencing or through YouTube videos, I think right now the reality in schools is that even though the government, trying to be very diplomatic now, I'm just gonna, give me a second, just I'm gonna mute for a second, swear for about 5 minutes, and then come back on. Okay. Even though the current government has decided that the schools are going to go back to nearly normal operations, the budget that doesn't go with it means that schools are going to make a lot of sacrifices and choices, and part of that will be field trips, part of that will be in-school presentations. So I'm just trying to find a way to be able to connect with those schools and those students. And so I'm thinking about doing different methods of connecting with them, rather than doing maybe a live school visit. Maybe it's a Marty Chan Storytime Corner where people will book a ticket and just come in and see me on Zoom at a certain time, because not every parent's going to send their kids to school, and they might need some kind of content or some kind of programming to keep the kids engaged. So I'm thinking about that kind of stuff. I'm also thinking about just physically, like how much more can I tour? So just having this kind of option is great for me, simply because I don't like wearing pants right now. It's been like if I stand up right now, you'll see my pajama bottoms. My wife is screaming at me right now, don't stand up.
That's funny.
I'm curious. We're actually almost at the 1 hour mark. So I wanted to maybe leave time for people to ask questions, but just sort of as a wrap-up question to this part of the discussion, for people who are interested in connecting creatively with others during this time through concerts and videos and live streams, is there any top tip you would give to people, something that you want them to take away from this?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking people, very explicitly, please retweet this, please share this, even behind the scenes, sending whatever, it is that you're trying to get out there in the community, sending that information directly, privately to certain people, prominent people maybe on social media, to try and get them to help you get the word out. Don't, underestimate the power of what that type of one-on-one interaction or explicit request for support, for shares, for participation might get you. So that's probably a good tip. And then, if we're getting technical, use the right hashtags, be strategic about the hashtags that you're using online. In Edmonton, hashtag YEG. If you're talking about food, YEG food. If your project or your idea or whatever it might be is connected to downtown, maybe it's YEGDT is the hashtag that you're using. So hashtags can be really powerful. Direct outreach can be really powerful. And just explicitly asking people for support can be really helpful in engaging and sharing on the community as well.
Personally, I found that you need to start with the biggest audience that you have. Like, most of us are on several social media sites, and it can be quite complicated and difficult to hit them all at the same time with a simulcast or something. There's programs available, but it's difficult and it can get expensive. But if you just focus on the one that you're really strong at, like Facebook is where I have the most followers and the most engagement. So I focused on that and didn't worry too much about YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. for the time being, and really focused on Facebook Live. And I found that whatever's going on with the algorithm, they're really prioritizing live video right now. So if you can create live content, that's going to get pushed to the top of people's news feeds, and you're going to get better luck with that than just pre-recording a video and uploading it to YouTube. That has been my experience for sure.
Marty?
I guess my top tip would be, just have fun with the platforms. I echo Martin's comment about pick something that you, one platform and stick with it. I have a short attention span, so I jump between Facebook and Twitter and now YouTube. But I have fun with them because I think one of the things that can be off-putting to an audience online is if they can see that the presenter, the performer, the artist is doing it just because I have to do this to promote myself and I'm not finding any joy in it. It comes across. And so for me, like doing something like Letters of the Pandemic or my kids' videos, I'm still having fun with them because it's just something that I'm learning and just having fun with. Same thing, even though I get angry on Twitter, I try to do it with my sense of humor. And so when people see me tweeting, they tend to gravitate toward that sense of humor just because they recognize, oh, this guy might be politically engaged, but he knows sort of a way to get it across that can make me laugh during a dark time. And so part of my bent has been, okay, if I'm going to be on these social media platforms, I'm going to try to post and tweet the things that would bring me some moment of comfort during some tough times. And I found that strategy has worked really well for me, just because sometimes people just need a little bit of light.
Definitely.
So if you want to start putting your questions into the chat box, if you have any, you can start putting them in there. If you want to ask it and unmute yourself, just type that in there too. Yeah, it's actually, I do have to say, this is the first Zoom thing I've done where literally no one in the audience has turned their camera on. So to me, that has been a bit strange. But yeah. Okay, Nancy asks, what are your future projects for the panelists?
Future projects. I've got a new book. It's coming out in the fall called Haunted Hospital. And it's for reluctant teen readers. It's a creepy story inspired by the Charles Campbell Hospital. And in the story, 4 teens investigate an abandoned hospital to look for ghosts, and what they discover is far creepier than what they thought was in there. So I'm putting together a trailer for that, and I'm probably going to do some kind of virtual book launch that in the fall. So keep your eyes open for that. And I've got another book on the go called Disappearing Act. It's a young girl who wants to get into a magic show. And so she gets into all sorts of hijinks as she's rehearsing her act with a friend. And was it Jock asked to do a magic trick while Martin has a COVID song.
Yeah.
Okay, watch this. I'll make my hair disappear right there. That's my magic trick for tonight.
Also for Marty, where can we find your Letters of the Pandemic?
If you go to YouTube, look for Marty Chan Author, and that will take you to all my videos. Or if you're following me on Twitter, you can find a lot of them there. So my Twitter handle is @Marty_Chan.
I can answer 2 questions in one. The question about future projects. Just before the pandemic started, I started working on my next album, which is going to be a collaborations album featuring a bunch of my favorite Edmonton singer-songwriters. So I'm working at Velveteen Studios, and on each day in the studio, I invited a different singer-songwriter to come and write a song with me. So they'll be featured as a vocalist, and we wrote it together. And the first one that we released was my pandemic song. So Jock asked if I had a COVID song. I wrote one with Vriend. On the day the lockdown was announced, we were getting all of these messages telling us about all our cancelled plans for 2020, stuff that we've been working on for a long, long time, like tours of Europe and festivals, and obviously all down the toilet. So we wrote a silly song to cheer ourselves up. And if you want, I could play it for you, but there's no obligation. It's called The Isolation Groove.
I want. Yeah.
We've
We've got some people saying play it in the chat, so
Okay.
I think you have to play it.
Okay, cool. It does have a silly dance.
Ooh.
that people can join in with. Maybe I'll demonstrate the dance. Go, we're in this together, but get away. I'll love you forever. From far away till you're feeling better. We're in the isolation groove.
Wow.
That's the chorus and the dance. So maybe that's enough. I don't know.
I feel like we need some with the guitar. Come
Okay.
on.
All around the world, everybody's freaking out now. All I really wanna know is when can I go out of my house? I just wanna dance with you even in a hazmat suit. We can hunker in my bunker, baby, we ain't got no morning commute. We're in this together, but get away, I'll love you forever. From far away till you're feeling better. We're in the isolation groove. We're in this together, but separately. I'll love you forever, but please don't touch me till you're feeling better. We're in the isolation groove. Ain't nobody on the street and nobody on the dance floor. They're too busy buying everything in every single grocery store. Let's heat up the kitchen, baby, we got one more can of beans. There ain't nobody else I'd rather be stuck with in a quarantine. All together now, we're in this together, but get away, I'll love you forever. From far away till you're feeling better. We're in the isolation groove. We're in this together, but separately. I'll love you forever, but please don't touch me till you're feeling better. We're in the isolation groove. We're in the isolation groove. Yeah.
Yay! Oh, we've got people like turning our video on to clap. Yay! And some emoji claps. Yay! That was excellent. Thank you so much. You heard it here first, everyone. So yeah, so that you've got that album coming out, and
yeah, planning to launch it at the big show at the Jube and have all of those artists, special guests on the show. So it should be a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you. I think Linda has sent me a quick email, so unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to say goodbye early to Linda. But if there's any other questions for Marty and Martin, I don't think any came in. There was a lot of appreciation for your song.
Jock just turned himself on. I don't know if he was trying to say something.
Oh, Jock. Did you want to unmute yourself and ask something, or just say hello?
Just say hello.
All right.
I privately messaged Martin, saw him at a house concert in Red Deer not terribly long ago. We were dodging raindrops.
It was
down near Cornet Park, and Marty, of course, I've known, well, not of course, but I've known Marty a little bit over the course of years, so it's a real pleasure.
Well, thank you for coming. Anyone else? People just wishing luck, amazing talents, so great, especially in the Crescent concerts.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had something from Marty actually in response to something he was saying about school funding and funding being cut and losing things like field trips and arts presenters was a problem before the pandemic happened with the education cuts that happened, as I'm sure you know very well. But one thing that I'm doing in response to that, which happened before the pandemic, was I decided to do my Jube show twice. So there'll be an evening concert as usual, but there'll also be a free matinee for high schools. And I have been reaching out to, in the course of my work, I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of pretty well-established, well-connected people in the community that have money to invest in charitable causes and good causes that like the arts and that are lovers of the arts. So I've been reaching out to some of them, and the the cost of the extra theater time and busing all of the students to and from the Tube, 2,500 kids in school buses, is being covered by sponsors. So that's something that I'm sure you've considered, but I would really recommend that people in your position and in my position that are trying to do stuff for schools and for people who need something but can't afford to pay for it, do reach out to those people in our community, because this pandemic really hasn't hit everybody equally. I know a lot of people that I know in Edmonton are quite well established as well, and are retired anyway, and have their houses paid for, and it's not been as big a hit for them as for a lot of working people and young people and parents of young children. So I think a lot of those people have very good hearts, and some of them deep pockets, and are very, very keen to support the arts, especially local arts and education at this time. So it's a prime time, I think, for reaching out to those people to tell them what you're doing and try and get them on board.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that makes me think about the challenge for performing arts right now. I think as COVID hit, you saw it sort of make its waves through, hitting pretty well almost every sector in our society. And one of the things that I'm a bit afraid of, or a bit concerned about, is the performing arts sector will they look like they're going to be the last to sort of come on board, because certainly we don't have the kind of budgets that, let's say, the NHL has to create a bubble to protect their players. And you think about some of the small performing like theater groups that are doing work for dedicated audiences, but how can they rehearse plays and have an audience when they have to pay rent for a theater space, but they can't have as many people in the audience as they would need to pay the bills, things like that. So I really feel for people in the performing arts right now, and if anybody out there can show the people in the sort of performing arts a little bit of love right now, that would be great. Not just for me, but just for if you know a local artist, know that they're struggling.
Well, thank you. If there's any last minute questions, feel free to throw them in there. But I think I'm going to just Nancy, did you have a question?
Not a question, but before we wrap up, I was hoping to give a little plug for some of EPL's upcoming events.
For sure. I didn't have exact details in my notes,
okay.
But yes, mention particular events that you want to mention. Nancy works for the library as well.
Yeah, so you're having another panel conversation on August 5th on racism in Canada, so talking about recent events, and so we have a great panel lined up for that. I don't have a date for this yet, but we are having a live bread baking workshop where professional bakers will be here answering all of your bread baking questions. So for those of you with sourdough starters that won't rise like mine, bring those questions. And this is a little further into September, but Kate and I are co-hosting the annual EPL Spelling Bee, which is going to be virtual. We're going to do it tournament style and live stream it. So if you consider yourself a champion speller, watch out for those registrations. There's going to be 4 qualifying rounds, semifinals, finals. So at the end of it, we'll have best speller in Edmonton. Thank you.
I think you incorporate drinking as part of the virtual spelling bee.
It's virtual, so you can drink whatever you like.
Whoever spells it correctly, everybody else has to take a drink.
Oh, that'll be the adults only version.
So
the adults only spelling bee.
Will there be some of those ghastly American versions of words?
We usually use Canadian spelling. That's usually our rule of thumb.
We try to find the least controversial words, in that they have one single spelling, because Kate told me last year some of the words she picked, people were like, that can be spelled multiple ways. Which,
people get quite up in arms, or pronounced in multiple ways. And so, with the bread baking one, I actually know there's 2, because one's going to be sourdough and one is going to be other artisanal style bread.
Yeah, so. I don't know the difference between, isn't sourdough artisanal, but yes, there will be 2.
Very exciting things to look forward to. So thank you for sharing that. So I just want to thank everyone for showing up. I know, it's been a good turnout. Thank you for sticking through the technical difficulties. Zoom fatigue is real. We've been doing a lot of these, and it can be a lot. So thank you again for all coming. this is going to be an ongoing series, Capital City in Conversation. We're going to be talking to people in the community who are doing neat things, hopefully on a monthly basis. So keep an eye out for the next one of these coming up. And then hopefully once we do go back in person, it'll be a hybrid thing. I'm hoping to host these out of the new Milner Library, but also live stream for people who can't make it down there. Because we've been seeing a really good turnout for these events online, and we want to continue offering it that way. I just want to remind as well that if you don't know, EPL has opened its branches for limited service right now. So if you have a hold, you can go in and pick it up. And just check the hours, but you can do that. And you can also get all of the online resources that we have through EPL from home. So visit our website, epl.ca, and check out that. It includes online events like what Nancy was talking about, access to online book clubs, videos, activities, summer reading clubs. So there's summer reading club for kids and for adults, and tons more. As I mentioned at the beginning, I was recording this, so parts of this might show up on our podcast. So if you haven't listened to our podcast yet, it's called Overdue Fines. You can access all past 61 episodes online through the website or wherever you get your podcasts. I was on the most recent one talking about the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future, and it was a really fun conversation, so you can check that out. So parts of this might show up on there, just depending. Yeah, Marty and Martin, is there anything else you'd like to plug or talk about or make sure people know how to get in touch with you before we wrap this up?
I'd like to plug the idea of street concerts with other artists, because there's so many wonderful performers in this city that would love to perform for you on your street or in your backyard or at your community league in a socially distanced way. And I know a lot of people are already doing this, but the by donation model has been working really well for me. We take a reduced fee up front to guarantee the booking, and the rest is made up by people paying what they can. So people are welcome to come whether they can afford to contribute or not. And it's a great model for bringing the arts to people in your neighborhood, and also to support those artists through these tough times. So please reach out to other artists. I'm doing great. I have enough bookings, but there's lots of people who don't. So please reach out to your favorites and people that you know.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Marty, anything you want to plug before we wrap it up for the night? We've touched on a lot of things, but yeah.
Follow Linda Huang on Twitter. She's a great promoter.
Yes.
Of local events. So definitely check out Linda on Twitter. And if you're into Letters of the Pandemic, check out the Marty Chan author YouTube video or YouTube channel for those things. And other than that, enjoy what's left of the summer, and hopefully we will all see each other in person at some future date when a vaccine is in place.
I hope so.
Yes, we will. It's going to be awesome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to Martin, and Linda. I will send her my thanks offline. So yeah, thank you, everyone, and have a good night and stay safe and healthy.
Good night, folks.